Video was inspired by a particular someone who claims I can't meditate. First and foremost, get that word out of your head. Can't, cannot. The only reason I'm so smart, or so I claim, is because I removed that word from my vocabulary a long time ago. So instead of saying I cannot, oh, it is physically impossible to, instead say I have difficulty with. Right? I have difficulty with meditating. I have difficulty with remembering that I cannot. Because at least I have difficulty with tells your brain that it is possible to, but that you're having difficulty right now, which means you might improve later. While I can't says it is impossible to do so. There is no way I will ever fill in the blank. Chances are you meditate more than you think. There are more than one type of meditation. Particularly, there is something called void meditation. And what void meditation is essentially is hyperfocusing, focusing entirely on what you're doing. An example, driving entirely on the traffic, hyper-focusing, paying attention, looking both ways, keeping track of all the other cars, what it feels like as you're gripping the steering wheel. Entirely here now, focused on what you're doing. Other types of void meditation include spot meditation. Spot meditation can be as simple as, I don't know if it shows up here, see that little nick where someone's like hit the wall with the door, focusing entirely on that spot. The goal of meditation is to get your thoughts down to one or no thoughts. So focusing entirely on that, anytime my mind dwindles, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, which is focusing on this dot. Which you could say is not focusing on the dot. The dot is just kind of a gateway to get you a single focal point in a very busy world that demands a lot of our attention a lot of the time, where there's constant cycling information. What you had for breakfast, how will I look in this, who will judge me for that, how to talk, how to act here and there, thousands of thoughts overlapping each other. So the point of this type of meditation is to slow that down, which will be learned from over time by merely focusing on that spot. I don't know what's up with my camera. Maybe it's picking up my energy. Sound meditation. Sound meditation is essentially the same idea. All of these you'll notice a similar style to. Sound meditation is taking something like a clock, say, and focusing entirely on its ticking, ticking, tick, 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 until it's all that you hear. Everything else doesn't matter, as if this really matters. Allow yourself to be absorbed and to absorb this clock, tick, tick, ticking. Allow it to be all you hear. Let it grow louder in your mind. Let it drown out all the other sounds. You can do this with just about any sound that you can choose. And then in more advanced stages, you can try to recreate, controlling your own thoughts, to summon and to banish the ticking without the physical device. Kinesthetic meditation. And this is, you take an object. You could use, one of the easiest is a candle flame or something. You focus just past the tip of the flame, or whatever the object is. You could use this ball of yarn if you want. And you just gaze upon it. Let yourself go, falling into this object, so to speak. Because whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, several subconscious thoughts are occurring. What it feels like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like if this object has a taste. All because you're gazed on and no other focus is anywhere else on this object, which the strength of that thought process grows the more time that you spend with it. Also, the more time you spend doing these types of exercises, the faster and faster you'll get into these sorts of trance. And then it'll be quicker and quicker to know what it is to be as one with a ball of yarn or a candle flame or what have you. Advanced stages of this, you'll be recreating these in your mind. You focus on the object for, say, 2 to 5 minutes, however long you can last, we could also say. That time will grow. And then after spending a few moments on this, you close your eyes and you try to recreate that substance in your mind. It'll tend to move around. You'll try to grab and recenter that back into your focal awareness. And repeat until you can hold that image, that idea, that thought, that emotion, that whatever type of meditation you're doing longer and longer, essentially gaining self-control and impulse control to any possible outside forces that may talk, excite, distract one of your senses throughout the day. Now, you may find this easier after having learned trance induction exercises, which essentially stouts down your brain to the different states. Right now, I, and so are you, and listening attentively, probably attentively, are in beta. Beta is in movement. It is active. It is action oriented. It is where we are most of the day. It is where we are when we focus, when we jog, when we run, while we talk to other people. A slower brainwave, slightly, is alpha. Alpha is calm, it's relaxed, it's more free to let go of control, more passive. It's where people who smoke marijuana are broadcasting. They're on alpha. They're in a relaxed, slower wave, more time to perceive things. Of course, this is the goal of meditation, step by step to bring yourself down and up as necessary. Okay, below alpha, is theta. Theta is where you dream, where you visualize, where your brain traces old neural pathways to gather information or creates new neural pathways to absorb and connect new information. Below theta, which is also a suggestible state, I should say, to give a general idea, you're in a suggestible state. This is where you are when you're in trance, when you're in meditation most of the time, where you are when you're in dream, where the goal of the therapist is to try to get you to a receptive state. This doesn't mean a powerless state, just a receptive state, a flux, if you will. Below theta is delta. Delta is deep sleep. It is deep, dreamless sleep. Theta and delta are the recovery states of the brain. Now, you can recreate these and step yourself down and up throughout the day. This is also why for some people who don't get proper sleep, they wake up and they just feel like a lead weight, exhausted. It takes time to come up out of delta, into theta, into alpha, into beta. And if you don't get the proper sleep, your body kind of lingers behind, dragging, holding on to that state or another. It is also why, because, let's get through that again, delta, deep dreamless sleep, theta, suggestible, alpha, relaxed, beta, alert, oriented regularly. So as you're coming out of sleep, wake and bake, or any other drug or substance of choice, it's why your pills, why your drugs, why your caffeine work so much better when you first wake up. Because since you're slowly coming out of these states, theta being one of the first ones you get to, you're more likely to take the suggestion of whatever the command of the substance is. So if you drink a sip of Monster, that's way better than drinking a whole can throughout the day, having drunk it when you first woke up, because your mind immediately took the suggestion and applied it. It says, oh, this is what we're doing? Before it even had time to wake up into beta, the guy who's always in so much control, or girl, or whatever you self-identify as. So trance induction exercises, there are a plethora, and I'll try not to drag them out to use just a couple of my favorite ones in this video. One, and most powerfully perhaps, is breath. Breath is life. You hear this said. You can control everything with the breath. Free divers going underwater with no air tanks and holding their breath 30 plus minutes. These people are trained after having spent much time consciously and subconsciously working with the breath, paying attention to if it moves, you move, right? To how it feels when they're in different modalities of thinking. A fun exercise to apply to your life is if you smoke weed or do coffee or do anything else that you actively know changes your brain state, to observe your breath while in that state. To observe how long and short, how different from normal your breath seems, and try to observe it without controlling it, because as you observe, you're going to want to change it in mere observation. But if you can manage to do it while relaxed, you're going to notice that your breath patterns actually change depending on what substance and therefore mental state or vice versa that you're in. So you can also use this to your advantage, and you can look into breath work, holotropic breath work, kundalini breath work. It goes by many names depending on who's teaching it and what they were teaching it for. But one of the easiest and quickest is what I call the 666 breath. I know, stereotypical. But you inhale and try to make your inhale last essentially is the same length as the exhale. Inhale for 6 seconds. Hold for 6 seconds. Exhale for about 6 seconds. And if you can, as the breath is empty, hold it empty for 6 seconds. This teaches us a lot of things. It teaches us mental clarity and focus. There is not much for those who say they can't meditate. It takes a lot of effort to do this in the beginning, and therefore you can meditate because you're slowly teaching yourself right now. to control the breath, to apply effort, to apply focus entirely on this, because you can't do it without focusing on it. And over time, that focus will be less and less, and it'll be more reflexive, and it'll be just as you'd like it to happen. These things happening naturally to you because you've become familiar with your very own breath. Same thing is true of another trance induction method, Kundalini Yoga. Yoga being all about the body, Kundalini being all about the energy or the breath. You get used to doing these bends and these contortions, and you're essentially working out, stressing and relaxing muscles until they're completely relaxed. You've worked out every bit of tension, and you become familiar with your body to such a point, hopefully one day, that you just do it all subconsciously. You'll find yourself in a crowded, cluttered room, doing all these crazy movements without even thinking about it, just navigating flawlessly and relaxed over all of this mess. Because now this is a part of you, and your body and your mind are communicating much more freely than they ever had before. And now they're even doing so without needing to think about it. Become intimate with the you. So we've talked of breath induction, and this body induction, visualization induction. There are a couple different ones for this, but what I find one of the most easiest, because most of us have been in an elevator in our time, is I call it the elevator. In the elevator, you simply imagine yourself. It's a lot easier to visualize something, even for those with difficulty with visualization skills, which, by the way, take fish oil. It'll help you a lot. But if you have difficulty visualizing, it's easier to visualize something that you've already done. And we've all ridden an elevator, and we've all gone down on an elevator, majority of us, I assume. And as you're riding in this elevator in your mind, you are to feel the vibration of the floor, just like a real elevator. Go through your 5 senses as much as you can to relive the experience. Your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. It really doesn't, between memory and reality. And in doing this, your brain will mimic the state that it was in throughout half of these exercises. But the real goal is to create what's called the falling effect. You may have felt this sensation of falling just before you go to sleep. And if you don't react to it, you fall asleep. But if you react to it, you stay awake longer. That's what you're trying to create. What people might call the mind awake, the body asleep state. So while you're in this elevator, you imagine, feel the vibration, hear the hum or whatever music or noise or anything that might have been in the background in the original memory recording it. Feel it as it's dropping down, Feel the vibration underneath your feet. If there are lights in there, recreate them in your mind to the best of your ability. The doors are going to open and close every other floor or so, allowing you to see random nonsense that has nothing to do with why you're here, so ignore it. Colors and visuals and suggestions. A lot easier than to just sit there and have it randomly come, because only when the doors open does the visualization change. And the doors close and you go down another floor or two. The doors open, revealing something else. And you keep doing this on the exhale, taking another floor or two down this elevator until you reach the bottom, the basement, floor 1, ground 0, or the red room. And it opens and you allow yourself to step into this place where it's completely comfortable, and you can take as long as you need to do this. A lot of people recommend the feather exercise, to be as a feather, watching the clouds pass up and by you, feeling the sensation of falling at a comfortable, relaxed speed, watching all the clouds and the comfortable colors just soar by you, each breath taking you lower and lower. You could go down a ladder. It's more important to feel than it is to see. You could, on the exhale, take a step down the ladder. On the inhale, stay still. On the exhale, take another step down the ladder. On the inhale, stay still. As you could advance with this, you can just let go of the ladder and fall. I wouldn't recommend changing the feather to a brick as a beginning trance practitioner. It isn't the most pleasant sensation to violently be dropped like a brick from the sky. But these are different ways that you can learn to slow down your brain state with breath or with visualization techniques, bringing you into that state where you're more in control of your own now slowed thoughts. Tonal vibrations. 7 sounds of creation and destruction. tonal vibrations, and you could make up your own to this, but you'll find that some are classic and work rather well, such as A-U-M, not O-M. You can pronounce in just about any sound you can think of, and are you to stretch it, this works on the same principle. Your mind, in order to stretch it, especially if it has more than one sound within it, particularly it's always the middle of the word that's vibrated and stretched, it takes a little bit of focus and effort to do something a little deviated, a little different from the normal way that you pronounce or say words and language, and therefore you're essentially meditating. You're putting effort and thought into the singular focal point to stretch that U and the sound Aum, which a stretch to you might show you why it's been mistranslated often as Om. And that almost sounds like an O, doesn't it? But in the mere focus and effort it takes to do that, your mind is slowing down, your breath is slowing down in order to stretch that, and therefore your brain is moving down a state or two, essentially achieving trance. You'll be more sensitive to light and to sound and stuff in a trance state. We go through altered states every day. People who drink are very familiar with altered states of light sensitivity and sound sensitivity after having drank. Energy drinks. These are just very common examples to show you that we go through several states as a reflex throughout the day, and how we can slowly bring them into awareness and take control of our minds and therefore our thoughts, emotions, and actions through these exercises. Belly breathing. Belly breathing is sort of intermediary meditation, whereas instead of simply focusing on the breath, which you are subconsciously in doing this, you can focus simply on the rising and the relaxing and falling of your belly as you simply breathe. Not focus so much on seconds or lengths of the breath, which you could, but subconsciously focusing on it by simply focusing on the rise and the fall, and each fall just letting go a little more, a little deeper into that trance. Just a little deeper, a little more relaxed. And light therapy. I chose to put this because it's almost uncategorical to the rest of these, but if everything is light and everything is wavelengths and intensity and vibration, as Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency, wavelength, and vibration. We now have some pretty miraculous devices. We have LED lights that are remote control that can become any color you want. You can change the brightness, you can change the color. These are excellent for experimenting with different states of mind, for coercing yourself one way or another towards being wherever you'd like to be. You may notice some common examples of color therapy, and there's a reason why it works. You've been hypnotized. You've experienced colors with certain connections to certain ideas, feelings, and thoughts throughout your entire life. Daytime is a certain color. Oranges and yellows and whites, right? Green being associated with nature and plants, and therefore either terror or calm depending on the person. Blues and whites in hospitals. Calmness. Very slow things going on. Red and orange being associated with devils or with anger or with jails and prisons and jumpsuits. So a lot of these things already exist in your mind, and therefore reintroducing yourself to one or more elements of those things, again, the brain doesn't know the difference, will allow it to partially relive these states and help bring it closer to anger, happiness, calm, energetic, or whatever the command you're trying to give yourself is. So color therapy does indeed work on the principle that it is impossible to avoid the connections we've already drawn through our senses perceiving and recorded in our noggins. So you can get these light bulbs relatively cheap at a Walmart, or I'm sure they sell them other places, but that's where I've gotten mine. And they go by various brands and abilities. Get one that has the ability to become more than just the color white, because they make smart light bulbs, as it were, in just shades of white. But you can get these light bulbs and you can experiment with those different colors. Just allow yourself. No one else needs to be around or know that you're doing this experimentation. So if it's a judgment thing, they don't need to be around. It's just a light bulb. You don't even owe them an explanation. But Experiment with what it feels like to be blue for a day. I'm blue. Experience what it feels like to be green or to be red. Experience what it feels like, the different heat, which LED doesn't essentially produce heat, but the sensation that you get from these different colors. And ride that state. Just allow it to consume you and consume it. It's just light. It ain't going to hurt you. And see how you feel. Then over time, after any of these different meditative suggestions, try to recreate that same phenomena in your mind. That color, that heat or that cold, that excitement or that lethargy. And there you will be able to essentially do what you said you can't do. Meditate. Now, for the sake of continuity and trying to pack a lot of information in here, I didn't want to make this too long. I didn't want to give too many suggestions. Rather, the principle is more important than the exercise, and I believe that I've covered that quite well. I'll be making some different videos on various topics of self-exploration, self-mastery, meditation, Kundalini yoga, lots of things of the similar that I might be able to give you information that really you kind of have access to, but clearly don't have the drive to go find. Because it is about self-betterment. It is about focusing on growing within the you, and which is very difficult while you're caught up in the high-speed, technologically advanced, text messages ping and distract you, constant demanding world. So it's important to learn to slow and step out of that. And you could find all this various information if you had the time to research and Google and to look deeply into it. But most people either don't have the willpower, meditate, or the personal interest or the opportunity with all of these things going on. But I'm going to make some videos covering various techniques, and hopefully you can take the time to make the time to have the time for yourself to grow. And you will be able to, anytime you want, go deeper into trance, come back out of trance. Oh man, I feel like shit, I didn't sleep good enough. I need to wake up. You can do that now. Oh man, I can't go to sleep. Well, you can put yourself out, and you won't need the brain waves, which is another induction meditation exercise. The brain waves. You won't need to use this stuff, but these are tools to tell your brain how to do what it already can do. But instead of waiting for commands from various uneducated things, coffee puts me here, melatonin puts me here. But how many of us are actively looking back at how it affected us, or making a scientific journal, a diary, if you will, of notes of how various substances affected our mind, our eating habits, our association with others, our attitudes, our health, instead of just it either did or didn't do this very minimum description of what we're told this drug does, of what we're told, if anything, of what the different frequencies of light does. So you'll be able to, after having experienced these with the cognitive attempt to focus on and do these with reason, when you're the commander, you're the one trying to affect your own mind, over time you'll be able to, like a light switch, focus on one of these elements of meditation, one of these associations in your mind, and recreate the same phenomena, essentially giving yourself immediate self-control, to be cognitive and aware, to be alert, to be wherever it is that you need to be. That is the entire point of meditation, to control you. Instead of reflex, instead of having no impulse control, as most of us don't, reacting to the stimuli we're receiving from the world. Instead, we can become our own stimuli, or we can override the stimuli around us that is shifting us into this behavior, this feeling, or this thought, or that, and now have complete, total control of ourselves. So I'll upload some other videos on these kind of topics. I'm sorry for the shitty lagginess and whatnot. I deliberately set it to a lower setting so that I know it would capture the full video. It's kind of unstructured, but kind of structured. I actually had a general outline on who I wanted this to go. But my name's Kevin Cass, and if we say you can't meditate, now I can't, if you've watched this video, take that as an excuse, because you can. You pick any one of these things, focusing entirely on what you're doing. There's people who play video games and you can wave your hand in front of their face. and not bring them out of their trance, they're meditating. They're meditating entirely on this game. That being said, you can do that too, and you can carry this knowledge into any field of your life and be 1,000 times happier, being your own master, so to speak. Peace be with you.